Bad news, everyone. So Kokomi is falling out of the meta. You can see here on the usage statistics that fewer and fewer people want to play her. She's at her all-time low, and this is basically because, well, Dendro and Freeze is just not as good. I mean, look at this. If you want to try and play Nilo Bloom against Coppelius, well, good luck trying to beat the Cryo Shield. Oh, I just did. So how did we do that? How did Kirara, a non-Fontaine character, inflict OCR damage? Well, it's called the Hero's Blade, and contrary to all expectations, yes, Neil Bloom is not dead in the Spiral Abyss. I can't believe people overlook something as obvious and simple as this. This completely free-to-play weapon allows you to just take care of the shield like you would if you had Farina, and because Kirara is an attack scaling, well, unit, also HP scaling, it's not like you lose any benefit. So, contrary to what a lot of people tell you, you can actually play Needle Bloom teams very, very successfully here, which means that Kokomi hasn't really lost any of her, well, value. In fact, you can even play Kokomi Hyper Bloom here. It still has the same effect. It all just depends on who you want to put the blade onto, but in this case, Kirara is a natural choice. You get shields, and obviously she doesn't really need the EM. So really, this entire conversation started on r/Kokomi mains. I was busy minding my own business, spamming photos, and then as I started scrolling, I saw people saying, oh, you know, Kokomi is just like leaving the meta. Any thoughts about this? And, well, true to word, the first answer is basically saying, yep, Freeze and Dendro, if that's out of the game, it's the end for Kokomi. That's it. And I was just like, but you guys realize that Kokomi has other good teams besides just Freeze and Dendro. And that is what today's conversation is about, because unlike a couple of other like videos ago when I showed you the whole full damage trick, there's another trick you can use, something that's always been present with Kokomi since the beginning, and it's called Sukokomon. This is one of those teams that is incredibly fun and difficult to play, hence why the usage rate is so low for Kokomi, because people don't want to use this difficult team. They don't want to actually properly put in the effort. But you'll see right now that even with the slips and the mess ups and all of these sorts of things, we're gonna pretty much breeze through the abyss. Now I've done this in a single recording, so this is the first time that I've played this team in quite a while, so there will be mistakes, there will be a couple of things, but obviously with the power of like hindsight and already being through this abyss, I kind of have a bit of an advantage. But in any case, so first half's done, we don't care about that. Let's look at Sukokomon. So the idea behind this team is that you are supposed to, in theory, play a very strict set of rotations, and then you'll do a massive amount of damage. You've got to swirl your guava to get the overload, and you need to like frame perfect time. And you know what? Nobody cares about that, because what you have with Sukokomon is a team that is very, very dynamic. So despite the fact that the little spreadsheet calculations will show you one thing, when it comes to playing this team practically, there are a couple of things you need to note. The enemies, for instance, oh, by the way, this is again incredibly funny to put the Mirror Maiden like that, sorry, that never gets old. So the thing about Sukokomon is that you basically have two rotations. You've got the elemental skills that you cycle through, and then the elemental burst. And ideally, if you play this team very well or properly, even if you don't play it exactly according to how it was intended, you'll find that you'll get the elemental burst ready for all of your team members in that order. So you'll always have Sucrose and then Xiangling coming online, then Kokomi, then Fischl. It's quite a phenomenal team with all the cooldowns lining up when you play it in a proper way. And this team is just one of those that has a lot of skill expression, not because of how you should play a fixed rotation, but how you adapt this team to like real combat. Because as you can see here, we've got two enemies that are flying around, we've got them positioning rapidly, but some of our, like for instance Gorba and the jellyfish, are stationary. So you need to plan around this, you need to plan around what the enemies are going to do. You need to kind of make it up as you go along, because no two playthroughs with Sukokomon Sukokomon here is going to be the same. And as you can see here, we're pretty much now at the end of the fight. We can start building like our energy and getting some particles for the next floor. But I can promise you, if I had to redo this floor, even live, as you can see, well, quasi-live, because I'm just doing a single recording here, but if I had to redo this in front of a live audience, the way this would play out would be completely different. And that is what makes it so much fun, but also so volatile. And this is again why I think people might not really prefer to play it, because the whole idea with meta is supposed to be the most effective tactics available. But then again, on the other hand, I also feel that if you are someone that has played enough of Genshin Impact, you should be in a position to start playing as a hardcore player these more difficult teams. You should have the skill level to be able to execute on the requirements. So whilst it might not be the most effective, in other words, there are teams that require less effort and skill and you get more out of them, I do think that as endgame players that love Kokomi, this is one of the teams in our arsenal. This is a team that we can use. But regardless, I mean, obviously this is just speaking to the Kokomi fandom. I know people in general are all just about Arlecchino, and since Neuvillette and Farina are currently the biggest and hottest thing in the Abyss, people are really going to overlook Kokomi, which is obvious. I mean, I get it. She's had her time, and obviously if the Abyss favors more of her other teams, which would mean other units like Ayaka and so on, then we could perhaps then start seeing more of Kokomi. But from my perspective, it's not like you don't have options. You've got the options to abuse full damage, like I've shown in a previous video. You can abuse Sukokomon here, you can run Needle Blooms, you can run the Hyper Bloom in the first half, so it's not like you can't use Kokomi whatsoever. And that is just the message of today's video. So despite her falling out of the meta, it's not because of Dendro or because of Freeze, it's just that because of the other units in those other teams not finding flavor. It's not so much that Kokomi's usability or flexibility has really diminished whatsoever. You just need a good F2P weapon or just know what you're doing here on the second halves. By the way, if you can get lucky and time it here with the infusion on Sucrose's burst, you can take care of these two guys with a Pyro infusion, but that is very difficult to do and not always as consistent. Regardless, so from my side, the message of today's video is clear. There's a cheap trick to beating the first halves, and then there is the more difficult but fun way to play with Kokomi, and I certainly like it. Alright, thank you so much for watching, and see you again. Cheers.